Good morning, crime community. I'm here to read out Life and Letters of Maria Edgeworth, Volume 1. Just part of the beginning. We were reading it a couple days ago. Building and planting alterations and improvements of every kind at Edgeworthstown were at once begun by Mr. Edgeworth, but always within his income. He also had made two rules. He employed no middlemen, and he always left a year's rent in his tenant's hands. Go before Mr. Edgeworth, and you will surely get justice, became a saying in the neighborhood. Some men lived with their families without letting them know their affairs, wrote Mrs. Edgeworth, and however, a great many of their affection and esteem for their wives and children think that they have nothing to do with business. They are not my father's way of thinking. On the contrary, not only his wife, but his children knew all his affairs. Whatever business he had to do was done in the midst of his family, usually in the common sitting room, so that we were initially acquainted not only with the general principles of conduct, but with the minute details of everyday application. I further enjoyed some peculiar advantages. He kindly wished to give me habits of business, and for this purpose allowed me during many years to assist him in copying his letters of business and receiving his rents. With the younger children, Mr. Edgeworth's educational system was one of the most cheerful kind. They were connected with all that was going on, made sharers of all the occupations of the elders, and not so much taught as shown how best to teach themselves. I did not think 1 tear per month is shed in this house, nor the voice of reproof heard, nor the hand of restraint felt, wrote Mr. Edgeworth to Mr. Darwin. Both in precept and practice, he was the first to recommend what is described by Bacon as an experimental mode of education. Surely, says Mrs. Edgeworth, it would be doing great service to bring into a popular form all that metaphysicians have discovered which can be applied to practice in education. This was early and long my father's object. The art of teaching to invent, I dare not say, but of awakening and assisting the inventive power of daily exercise and excitement by the application of philosophic principles to trivial occurrences, he might be pursued with infinite advantage of the rising generation. Maria Edgeworth found very congenial society in the family of her relation, Lord Longford at Pakenham, which was 12 miles from Edgeworthstown, and in that Lord Granard of Castle Forbes, 9 miles distant, Lady Granard's mother, Lady Moira, full of wit and wisdom and full of great nobility of character, would pour out her rich stories of reminiscence of the young girls with ceaseless kindness, and many more than others was her life influenced, helped, cheered, and animated by the love of her father's sister Margaret. Mrs. Ruxton, the intimate friend and correspondent of 42 years, whose home, Black Castle, was within a long drive of Edgeworthstown. Mrs. Ruxton's 3 children, Richard, Sophie, and Margaret, were Maria Edgeworth's dearest companions and friends. The great love which Miss Edgeworth always felt for children and tried and developed to its fullest extent in the ever-increasing family circle. Mrs. Elizabeth Edgeworth added 9 more brothers and sisters to the group of 6, which already existed. The eldest of them, Henry, was born in 1782, was entrusted to Maria's especial care. Maria to Charlotte Snade, Edgeworthtown, December 9, 1787. I think, my dear Aunt Charlotte, I did not know till Henry returned to us after his 6 weeks' absence how very agreeable even a child of his age can make himself, but I am sure that his journey can be productive, as so much pleasure to me from the kindness and approbation you have shown, and has left in my mind to full a conviction of your skill in the art of education, that I should part with Henry again tomorrow with infinitely more security and satisfaction than I did 2 months ago. I was really surprised to see that what case and alacrity little Henry returned to all his former habits and occupations, and the very slight change that appeared in his manner or mind. Nothing seemed strange to him in anything or anybody about him. When he spoke of you to us, he seemed to think that we were all necessarily connected to all our commands and wishes, and that we were all one whole, one great polypus soul. I hope my father will tell you himself how much he liked your letter, the overflowings of a full mind, not the froth of an empty one. In 1790, the family group was broken by the death from consumption at 15 of Honora, the beautiful only daughter of Miss Honora Edgeworth, Maria Edgeworth to Mrs. Ruxton, Edgeworth Town, February 11, 1790. Your friendship, my dear Aunt Ruxton, has, I am sure, considerably elevated the anguish of mind my father has had to feel, and your letters and well-deserved praise of my dear mother's fortitude and exertion for her real pleasure to her. She was indeed had the great deal to bear, and I think her health had suffered, but I hope not materially. In my father's absence, she ordered everything, did everything, felt everything herself. Unless, my dear aunt, you have been present during the last week of Honora's sufferings, I think you could not form any idea of anything so terrible or so touching. Such extreme fortitude, such affection, such attention to the smallest feelings of others as she showed on her deathbed. My father had carefully kept his mind occupied over since his return, and we cannot help see his feelings at intervals. He has not slept for 2 or 3 nights, and as I think, far well today. He said the other day, speaking of Honora, my dear daughters, I promise you one thing, I never will reproach you with Honora. I will never reproach you with any of her virtues. There could be no kinder or more generous promise that I could not help fearing that my father could refrain from speaking with her too much and that it would hurt his mind. He said it used to say it was a great relief to him to talk to my mother, Honora. In the summer of 1791, Mr. and Mrs. Edgeworth went to England, leaving Maria in sole charge of the large family at home. She used to assume her young sisters at this time by stories which she would write on a slate during the leisure moments of many occupations permitted, and which she would read aloud to them in the evening. By their interest or question, she estimated their stories, which became the foundation of the parent's assistant. When her father was with her, she always wrote a sketch of an intended story and submitted it to his approval, being invariably guided by his advice. In October, Maria was desired to follow her parents to Clifton, bringing nearly all the children with her, a formidable undertaking for a young girl of those days of difficult traveling. Maria and Mrs. Roxton, another after returning from the visit of Black Castle, Edgeworth Town, October 1791. My dear mother is safe and well, and a fine new sister, I suppose you have heard. My very dear aunt, since the moment I came home till this instant, my hands have trembled and my head whirled with business, but the delightful hope of seeing my dear father and mother at the Bristol is a fine perspective at the end. My father has just written the kindest letter possible, and Emmeline is describing his directions about our journey. We are to set off as soon as we can on Tuesday next morning, I believe, for my father is extremely impatient for us to come over. I write by this night's post to Mr. Hanna to make lodgings for us in Dublin, as we are, as you will see, to go by Holyhead, and it is coming round by Black Castle, that it is out of the question. For everybody's sake but my own, I regret this. For my own, I do not. For the few hours I should have spent on your company would not, my dearest aunt, balance the pain of parting with you all again, which I did feel thoroughly, as if I had not had the kindest friends and the fullest occupation. The moment I came home, I should have been in the lamentable a long time. Tell my dear uncle I never shall forget the kindness of his manners towards me during the whole of my stay at Black Castle, and the belief that he thinks well of his little niece adds much to her happiness, perhaps to her vanity, which he will say there was no occasion to increase. And now, dear Sophie, you are a roaring blade, the Thomas Day. He will, in his readiness to wait upon you whenever you can, and will. This little brother was born in the day of the Edgeworth family, received the news of the sudden death of their old friend, Mr. Day, in 1789. Have the charity to receive him. None the day, my dear aunt, which will be the least inconvenient if you can, and Molly or John Langan will bring him into the old or new chase of your door, where I hope he will salute you and cry if he does not be surprised. You see, my dear aunt, that I am in a great hurry by my writing, but no hurry, believe me, can drive out of my mind the remembrance of all kindness I received at Black Castle. Oh, continue to love your niece. You cannot imagine the pleasure she felt when you kissed her, and you said you loved her 1,000 times better than ever you did before. Mrs. Smith's Holland, Friday morning. We are the insistent arrived, my dear aunt, after a 33-hour passage, all the children safe and well, but desperately sick. Poor little Sneyd especially. The packet is just returning, and my head is so giddy that I scarcely know what I write, but you will only expect a few shabby lines to say we are not drowned. Mr. Usher Edgeworth and Aunt Fox servant saw us on board, and Mr. E was so good to come to the wherry with us and see us onto the ship. He had the whole cabin to ourselves, no passenger except one gentleman, son-in-law to Mr. Dawson or R.D. He was very civil to us and assisted too much in landing, etc. I felt besides very glad to see one who knew even anything about the name of the Ruxton. Adieu, my dear aunt. All the sick, pale figures around me with faint voices send their love to you and my uncle. Maria to Mrs. Ruxton, Prince's Buildings, Clifton, December 29th, 1791. My dear uncle, if you are going to the canal, put this letter in your pocket and do not be troubled in your conscience about reading it, but keep it till you are perfectly at leisure. For I have nothing strange or new to tell you. We just live the same kind of life that we used to in Edgeworthstown, and though we move amongst the numbers, we are moved by them and feel independent of them for our daily amusement. All the phantasmas I had conjured up frightened me, vanished after I had been here a week, and I found that they were very phantoms of my imagination, as you very truly told me. We live for very near the downs, and we were almost every day charming walks, and all three children going bounding about over hill and dale along with us. My aunt told me that once when we went where to Clifton, when full dressed to go to the ball at Bath, and suddenly changed your mind and undressed again and go out walking with her. And now that I see the walk, I'm not surprised, even if you were not, to have had the pleasure of my aunt's company. My father had got the transfer for the ticket for the Bristol Library, which is an extremely fine one, and makes it appear 10 times finer is that it is very difficult for strangers to go into. From thence he can get almost any book for us he pleases, except for a few of the most scarce, which are by the laws of the library immovable. No ladies go to the library, but Mr. Johns, the librarian, is very civil, and my mother went to his rooms and saw the beautiful prints in Boydell's Shakespeare. Lavater has come home in a coach today. My father seems to think much of him what he did when he saw him aboard, that of some genius to add to the good deal of his mountebank. My failure is going soon to Bath. Madame de Genlis is there, and he means to present the translation of Adele and Theodore to her, and he is intended to have had me introduced to upon her, and upon inquiry she has informed that she is not visited by demoiselles in England. For some time I have kept a Bristol journal, which I intended to send to Black Castle in form of a newspaper, but I found that through everyday conversion and occurrences appeared a prodigious importance just as the moment that we were passing, yet afterwards they seemed so flat and stale as not to be worth sending. I must, however, tell you that the materials of one brilliant paragraph about the Duchess of York, Mr. Lord had seen the wondrous sight, and when she had presented to the Queen, H.R.H. kept Her Majesty waiting nearly an hour, till at last the Queen, featuring that some accident had happened, sent to let the Duchess know that she was waiting for her, and the Duchess at length arrived. She was so frightened, for a royal Duchess can be frightened as well as another, that she trembled and tottered in crossing the presence chamber, so that she was obliged to be supported. She is very timid and never once raised her eyes, so that our correspondent could not speak decidedly as to the expression of her countenance, but if we may be allowed to say so, she is not a beauty, and is very low. She was dressed in white and gold, etc., etc. The children all desire their love. They are playing the other day of going to Black Castle, and begging me to be Aunt Ruxton, which I assured them I would if I could, but they insisted on being Sophie, Letty, and Margaret at the same time, and were not quite contented at my pleading this to be out of my power. Thus we will end the letters from Miss Maria Sedgwick to her children and her brother and her father, and we're beginning to learn about life in the 1830s from England to Ireland to America, between Edgeworth and Edgewood and Wordsworth. We're learning from these two women about the history of American England. So if there's anything truth and likable here, please subscribe and enjoy.